the Beef's video, which there's a timestamp on there too that shows around the 1:43 they come out of the building. So we know she left around 1:45 with Yuri. And then she tells us in her statement she went straight home. No stops. And we know she's only about 3 miles away. About 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. So roughly 1:55 she gets home, gets out of her car, and leaves Yuri. The next thing we have is that 911 call. And we know that she made that 911 call at 5:05 p.m. We know it was after Rebecca made her call. So it's around that 5 o'clock hour that it's finally discovered that Yuri's in that car. 1:55 arrives home, exits the vehicle. We're going to say around 4:50, somewhere in there. 911 is called. That whole time in between, Yuri's left alone and forgotten in that vehicle. I do want to pause for a minute, speaking of the aggravated manslaughter, to address one other thing, the second count in this case. If you'll bear with me, we'll come back and we're going to talk a lot more about culpable negligence. But I think after seeing this, we're looking at almost 3 hours. It would be appropriate to discuss leaving a child unattended or unsupervised in the motor vehicle causing great bodily harm. What the judge is going to tell you, I have to prove to you that Tracy Howard Nix was a person responsible for Yuri. Yuri was younger than 6 years of age. Tracy Howard Nix left Yuri unattended or unsupervised in a motor vehicle for a period in excess of 15 minutes, or for any period of time if the health of that child was in danger. Members of the jury, when she shut that door and walked away, that child's health was in danger from that point. But there is no doubt that more than 15 minutes elapsed. And in doing so, Tracy Howard Nix caused great bodily harm to Yuri. What greater bodily harm is there than death? That's all the time I'm going to spend on that count. I believe that count, it's unequivocal. It's there. So let's focus more on her actions. Let's talk about culpable negligence. Let's talk about wanton and reckless. We have to look at those circumstances surrounding. It's easy to say, oh, she just forgot. That's simple negligence. Well, that's the only way. If she did it on purpose, she'd be charged with murder. We charged her with culpable negligence. So yes, forgetting something is simple negligence. Forgetting to lock your door when you leave your house, simple negligence. Forgetting to take the food out of the stove, simple negligence. Maybe even forgetting that you were the parent that was supposed to pick up the child who's safe at school, but has to wait another 10 or 15 minutes because you forgot. Simple negligence. Leaving a child unattended in a car for 3 hours in the hot Florida sun baking. That's not simple. No matter how you slice it, that is not simple. Yuri's death was not simple. Let's talk about that. We have to look at those facts and circumstances. It's not just the forgetting, but we have to look at what her duty was that day. She was the sole person responsible for the most vulnerable thing we have in our society as human beings. A baby. A baby. You have a heightened duty. You're in charge of something that literally can't live without you. She can't open that car door. She can't even get herself out of that car seat. She can do nothing to protect herself. She relies on someone to do it for her. She relies on a responsible person who keeps her first in her mind, who knows her duty, who knows this is a great responsibility. And we know that she knew that, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because she did that earlier. But she just got back to the house. I'm home. Let me do what I need to do. Yuri deserved to be the primary focus in her mind that day. And she wasn't. And that goes towards the culpability. That goes towards the criminality of her negligence. That's why this happened. You have, when she is in your possession, she is your focus. She should be the first thing on your mind. Now, let's continue our discussion about the facts. She picked up Yuri. Now, I know it was something that she wasn't expecting to do, but she did. She picked her up. She went and she got the diaper bag, she got the car seat, she got these, as I said earlier, were the supplies to ensure this child's safety. Members of the jury, the diaper bag was entered into evidence. And all those supplies are still in here. And you could feel the weight almost as much as Yuri herself. She had everything she needed to protect her, to care for her, to ensure her survival. She had a car seat. She had everything she needed. She's the one who put it in there. At this point, Yuri should be the only thing on her mind. Yuri should be the primary focus on her mind. Again, the diaper bag. We can see the supplies, the bottles to feed her, the clothes to clothe her, the medications to give her. You can just see the volume of stuff that she had. Again, why do I show you all these things? These are the things that should push Yuri to the forefront, that should make her the priority. The car seat, placed in her vehicle. She's there. She's there. And what did she do when she went there? She didn't just immediately go home and say, oh, I forgot I had her. She went to lunch for an hour. Let's talk about that. The time it be. She's over there. She's there for over 1 hour. She comes to the restaurant. She didn't leave Yuri in the car then. Yuri's with her. She brought her the diaper bag. And as a matter of fact, you see constant attention on Yuri. As a matter of fact, Yuri was not only the center of attention for the defendant, she was the center of attention for everybody there. There's something innate in human beings. When you see an infant like that, there's just a need to protect, a need to pay attention. And you could see that in the people around her. You could see that in the defendant herself. So why is this important? As I stated earlier, there she is. On her lap. The focus of her attention. Oh, she almost pushed off the bottle. Again, this is the thing that should be reinforcing in this caregiver mind, in this caregiver's mind. This is something I need to protect. This is something I need to look out for. Then she left these. She took Yuri with her, didn't leave her in the restaurant, took her with her. Put her in the car seat. You can see the blanket over her shoulder. She brought everything out, didn't leave anything behind there. Took the diaper bag. And then what'd she do? Drove straight home. And we saw her when she was leaving these. There she is. Diaper bag, white blanket, baby in hand, even the food. Didn't leave the food behind, had a friend bring it. There it is. Being placed right in the vehicle, Yuri in the car seat. She knows she has Yuri. She knew it. She placed her in that car seat herself. That's right behind her driver's seat. She's driving an SUV, but it's not one of those giant SUVs. It's not a Hummer. It's a small vehicle. She put the diaper bag in there. She put the blanket in there. All these things. And then where'd she go?
Was it just you and Yuri alone for her? Okay. Who chose the car with your apples? And about, no, when you got back to the house, did you make any stops in between?
No stops in between, straight home. Straight home from spending an hour at lunch, fawning over little Yuri. Didn't make any stops, no interruptions in between. Straight home. And what did she do when she got home? Well, parked her car, got out of her car, closed the door, and went about her business. What kinds of things was she doing?
Okay.
And I played my piano. And I practiced for a long time. I can't believe I didn't even think it.
So you went straight home and you started talking to your dog?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your dog's name again? Macy.
So what is she doing? She goes home, gets out of the vehicle, got to go talk to the dog. Got to go practice my piano. I'm working hard at it. As I said, got out of her car. Meanwhile, Yuri's left in that vehicle on a hot Florida 90-degree day. 3 hours. What is she doing in that 3 hours?
And when you went inside after getting home, what did you do?
I went and started practicing the piano. I take lessons. I have one on Thursday, and I need to just put in some time on it.
Okay.
She's practicing her piano, and Yuri's body is fighting the heat.
I was taking my other grandson. We're supposed to take him out for dinner.
Okay.
And I was impatient because they were about an hour behind. And I finally got in the car and went down to the barn because they had to go feed the pig for 4-H pig. And all of a sudden, when I got out of the car, it came across my head that I had Yuri and what happened. And came to pick her up and couldn't remember what happened.
She was more focused on her meeting that she had planned with her grandson than the 7-month-old whose body was fighting the heat in the car while she was thinking about all this stuff. Didn't even dawn on her.
Now, just so I understand correctly, Ms. Tracy, you said that you were going to get your other grandson for dinner. Okay.
That had been planned for several days.
Again, that's the thing that is more important to her at the time that she's thinking about. Getting out, taking care of the dog, playing the piano for an hour. Plans that she had made the day before, ignoring the plan that she had made that day, and that obligation that she made that day to protect that child.
After 4:30, I got in the car so that I would be there when they were feeding the pig when you know.
She actually got back into the car to go feed the pigs. Got back into the car where Yuri, at 4:30, where Yuri's been now for 2.5 hours on her own. Still, nothing.
About how long after 4:30 did you realize that she was in the car?
I sat and talked today, probably 5 to 10 minutes,
Okay.
with him sitting on the lawnmower and me sitting in the car. And then I got out because Rebecca Aiden had come up, and I was going to see if I could help them. And all of a sudden, I realized I just had that flash of what had happened to Uriel. And then all of a sudden, I realized he opened the door.
She's in the vehicle with Yuri, if we're believing her story, for 10 to 15 minutes. And still, Yuri's not at the top of her mind. It's not her primary focal point. Members of the jury, I think we've hit upon all of those things. When you look at all of those actions and inactions and choices that she made that day, it fits. It fits the definition of criminal negligence. It fits it. Again, you have to look at everything, not just the forgetting, but everything that went along with it. She shouldn't be forgetting. She has every reason to remember. It's 7 months old and it's in the back seat. That's the reason to remember. This isn't like, again, she says during her statement, I wasn't expecting it. Fair. That's fair. You weren't expecting it. But she didn't drive immediately home. She spent an hour with Yuri. She spent an hour with her. But the fact of the matter is, when she got home, I'm home, got to take care of my stuff. At that point. A 7-month-old is completely helpless. A 7-month-old deserves to be the center of your attention. A 7-month-old deserves to be taken out of that car and into the house. Members of the jury, when you're back there discussing what culpable negligence is, I would suggest that you look to the evidence. Because the evidence is there. It's Yuri's little hand frozen in a fist because of rigor mortis. It's Yuri lying on a table at the hospital when she should be sitting in the house of the grandmother. That is culpable negligence. Right there for all of us to see. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, Yuri deserved someone who was making her first. And instead, what she got was neglect. Not just neglect, but criminal neglect. She didn't deserve to be forgotten. She didn't deserve to be trapped. She didn't deserve to die. What she deserves is the person who is responsible for that criminal act to be held accountable for what she did. And that's what I'm asking you, the jury, to do. Is hold Tracy Nix responsible for failing Yuri. Hold her responsible for that culpable negligence of not paying attention to her, of leaving her trapped and alone. Find her guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Fletcher, defense?
Thank you, Ron. May it please the court, Mr. Coleman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry I don't have a slideshow to present you. Basically, the state's evidence is the defense evidence. The truth is the truth. The facts are the facts. We haven't tried to hide anything here. We tried to present the truth to you. I think every detective said that Tracy Nix and the family were all honest with you. Tracy Nix is innocent of these charges, ladies and gentlemen. And I ask you, please do not convict her because of your emotions over the fact that this is a child. Now, I'm not going to get into it right now, but the state has misstated some things regarding culpable negligence. I chose not to object, but I will go over that with you. I can't imagine losing a child, what that does to you. When my daughter was a child, that was my biggest fear when she was growing up. She's now got children. And also fear loss of a grandchild. It hurts. It's horrific either way. This whole thing is a tragedy, ladies and gentlemen. But don't compound this tragedy by convicting of her of something she's not guilty of. This is what the state's proven to you. They presented 15 or 16 witnesses. They presented at least 3 videos. I may have miscounted there. They showed you that Tracy Nix was a school teacher for almost 40 years. Tracy Nix was a churchgoer for almost 40 years. Sang in the choir. Taught Sunday school. Even had retreats for children. Obviously loved children. Even wrote the curriculum for these retreats, these weekend retreats. She's also a loving, caring, devoted grandmother. Grandmother, ladies and gentlemen. Loved her grandkids too. Tried to help her daughter out with Yuri. Kept Yuri a lot. Did whatever she could for Yuri and for her daughter, Kayla. And she also cared about her other grandkids. On this particular day, she was supposed to go with her daughter Rebecca's grandson out to eat and to go Christmas shopping. So that's what we have. That's who we're dealing with. A good person, a good lady, a good grandmother. You saw 3 videos. Now I'm kind of amazed here that the state shows the video from Beef O'Brady's as evidence of guilt. And I invite you to look at that video again when you get back in the jury room, because you'll have that opportunity, and just look and see what an attentive, caring, loving grandmother this lady is, still is, and how she treated Yuri. It's not something we made up. This is the video before all these events. But look for yourself and see. And don't let the state confuse you by adding these things, apples and oranges, as far as the element of culpable negligence, which is the crux of the issue in this case. Then they had 2 other videos that they showed Tracy Nix right after the incident, when she became aware of what had happened, how devastated she was. Completely, obviously loved this child, loved this baby. And then down at the sheriff's office, and even though Detective Fletcher said, well, I'm not sure I told her that she was being recorded or not, obviously she didn't know that. You can see her reaction and how much it affected her and how much she loved this child. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tracy Nix is guilty of simple negligence, and we don't deny that, but not criminal negligence. And you don't really hear about people being criminally charged for simple negligence. Give you an example. You run off the road a little bit, maybe there's a hole there, whatever, 3 or 4 people die. You hear about traffic accidents, 5 or 6 people get killed. Simple negligence, nobody's charged. This happens all the time. Now, we discussed a little bit on opening statement about, you hear people, parents or whoever, leaving babies in the car seat. If you don't know what the ultimate disposition is, you hear, well, they got arrested. Depends on the facts whether you're guilty. You've got to have culpable negligence, ladies and gentlemen. These criminal jury instructions, the state looked at them and suggests, they misinterpreted, and they've added they've confused these 3 elements. So there's 3 elements. There's no doubt that the child has passed away. Count 2, the death was caused by culpable negligence. And then count 3, the child was, Uriel was a child, and her death was caused by the neglect of Tracy Nix. And that's where he's confusing 2 and 3 and trying to sell this to you. Culpable negligence. Please listen carefully, and I can't stress this enough. Every person has a duty to act reasonably toward others, and this is what the judge is going to read to you. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intent to harm, that violation is negligence. That's what we have. Read it again. Every person has a duty to act reasonably toward others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intent to harm, that violation is negligence. Conscious. Where have they shown you anywhere that Tracy Nix consciously did this? Now, this is culpable negligence. The defendant cannot be guilty of aggravated manslaughter by causing a death because of a merely negligent act. She forgot. That's the act. That's not culpable negligence. forgetting. It's more than a failure to use ordinary care toward others. In order for it to be culpable, it must be gross and flagrant. Again, separate the act from what actually the result was. You have to separate the two. It's got to be gross and flagrant. She forgot. She simply forgot. Grandma forgot. Culpable negligence is a course of conduct showing reckless disregard of human life. Do you think she intentionally left this child in this car? Can you possibly, after seeing those videos, even think for a second that she intentionally and recklessly left this kid in this car? She forgot. Simple negligence, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm just reading the jury instruction. Culpable negligence is a reckless disregard of human life or the safety of persons exposed to its dangerous effects, or an entire want of care as to raise a presumption of conscious indifference to the consequences. Do you think for a second that she had a conscious indifference to the consequences? Again, she forgot. The results are horrendous. That's a separate element. They have to prove culpable negligence, and they can't do it. They can put on diaper bags, they can put on this timeline, they can put on this video from Beef O'Brady's, but none of that shows culpable negligence. This is extremely high burden of proof that they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Continuing. Wantonness or recklessness, grossly careless disregard for the safety and welfare of the public, or such an indifference to the rights of others as is equivalent to an intentional violation of rights. Did they come anywhere close to showing any type of intentional violation of rights? It has to be tantamount or equivalent to an intentional violation of rights. Culpable negligence is consciously, and again, I'm continuing reading the jury instruction. Culpable negligence is consciously doing an act or following a course of conduct that the defendant must have known or reasonably should have known was likely to cause death or great bodily injury. This is replete with gross, flagrant, conscious disregard. There's nothing here to show that. They've shown simple negligence. Again, every person has a duty to act reasonably toward others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intent to harm, that violation is negligence. Again, that's what we have. These are very serious charges. I ask you to deliberate, read these instructions at 7.7a, and look at the definition of culpable negligence. They have not proven it. The whole issue here, again, is culpable negligence, and she forgot when she got home. And you say, well, why did she forget? I don't know. The brain's a strange thing. Why did she forget? Was it age? Distractions? They had the roofers there that day. You had other plans. But again, she simply forgot. She simply forgot. And when she remembered, well, you saw what happened when she remembered. You know, Tracy Nix has to live with this forever too, carry that burden of what happened that day. But again, it was simple negligence. When you forget, you forget. And when you remember, why do you remember again? Now, I'm sure every one of you, regardless of your age, has had an incident or a number of incidents where you're supposed to pick up something or somebody on the way to work, and you get to work. You're supposed to pick up something at the grocery store on the way home. You forget. It's simple negligence. It was simple negligence here. The state was wrong when they said that there's a higher duty when it's a child. That's number 3. That's not number 2. There's nothing in culpable negligence that talks about babies as opposed to anybody else. You have to look at that. The actions of Mrs. Nix. The actions, not the results. There's nothing we can do to bring this child back, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I urge you to look at the definition. Again, he's taking simple facts. He's turning that into culpable negligence. And please don't make this terrible situation worse by convicting Tracy Nix of something that she's not guilty of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. State.
I started out when I spoke with you folks, discussing mistakes, and sometimes sorry isn't enough. And I would argue that the judge is going to instruct you on something that agrees with me. The court's going to instruct you that this case must not be decided because you're for or against anyone, because you feel sorry for anyone or angry with anyone. And I agree with that. No matter which side, we're human beings. I apologize to you, the jury, because we asked you to do something impossible, which is set aside what makes you human, your emotions, but you have to do it. And I stress, and I would agree, and I would echo, look at those facts. Those facts reveal the truth. Those facts reveal the crime. Don't make that decision because you sympathize with her. Don't make that decision because you're angry at her. Make that decision because she did it. That's what you need to make your decision on. I do want to spend a few moments of my time addressing some of the things that the defense said. Yuri, she isn't milk. She isn't groceries. She isn't an unlocked door. She isn't the pet you forgot to walk. She was a 7-month-old baby. And yes, you have to consider that when you consider whether something's reckless. What would a reasonable person who's in charge of a 7-month-old, who is responsible for her life, her survival, what would they do in that situation? The defense wants you to take the simple act of forgetting and focus on that and say, you can't look at the results. You can't look at the other factors. No, members of the jury, you have to. That is what tells you whether a simple mistake, simple negligence, is reckless and wrong. And I would argue to you, members of the jury, that it is here today. She should not have forgotten about that child. She spent all that time with that child. Defense points out, well, I can't believe we showed you the video. Yeah, we showed you the video. Because that Tracy Nix that was at Keith O'Grady's should have been the Tracy Nix that got out of the car. But it wasn't. She was more focused on other stuff she wanted to do when she got home that she completely forgot about her. Not for 15 minutes. Not for a half hour. Not for 45 minutes. Not for an hour. Not for 90 minutes. Not for 120 minutes. For almost 3 hours. Is that something a reasonable caregiver would do? Or is that something that's gross and flagrant and wanton and reckless? The act of leaving the child in the car, I don't think anyone would argue. If she, again, like I said, if she intended to leave that kid in that car and Yuri was trapped in there, she would be charged with a very different crime. We're talking about, it can be confusing, we're talking about negligence. She doesn't have to have the intent to hurt Yuri, but her actions did anyway. That's what we have to look at. It's a difficult case, members. It's a difficult crime. It's a difficult law. It is. But the facts are there. And once again, I need to remind you, she is not stepping on someone's foot. She is not leaving your eggs in the car overnight. She is a child. Defense counsel keyed in on a word, and there is a word in the culpable negligence instruction, conscious, and that throws people off. Conscious as opposed to unconscious. That's what that is. She was conscious the entire time. She should have known. She should not have forgotten. She had no reason to forget other than there were things more important, like playing the piano, taking care of the dog, feeding the pigs, finding her husband, those types of things. And defense counsel wants to talk about distractions. Well, from what we saw at Beef O'Brady's, she deals well with distractions. There were a lot of distractions around her. Everyone came up to see that thing. But she didn't forget Gary then. She didn't forget that. She took care of her. She did everything she was supposed to do. Unfortunately, Beef O'Brady's Tracy Nix stayed there. What came home was the one who committed criminal negligence. At the end of the day, members of the jury, I think you have to look at all the facts and circumstances. Not just the forgetting, but all of the surrounding circumstances. And you have to look at that and say, what would a reasonable person in that situation do? What would a reasonable person who is responsible for the care and safety of a 7-month-old infant do? And I would argue to you, it would be, remember. Don't forget. Don't leave. Be focused on her. Make sure she's okay. She's your little granddaughter. Care for her. Protect her. Get her out of the car. And a failure to do that, members of the jury, that's a mistake. That's criminal. That's a mistake. That's culpable. That's a mistake. That's the crime of aggravated manslaughter. That's the mistake that she needs to be held accountable for under the law. And you need to go back in that jury room and convict her. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to close your screen down?
Yes, sir.
Please.